33 years ago, 28 innocent children walked out of St. Mary's Orphanage in Oregon for what should have been a simple field trip to the coast. They never returned. Not one trace of them was ever found. No bodies, no witnesses, no answers. Just 28 empty beds, and a community haunted by the impossible. But what if I told you that the truth was hidden in plain sight all along? What if one desperate woman's refusal to give up would finally expose a conspiracy so twisted, so unthinkable, that it would shake this quiet town to its very foundation? October 15th, 1992. Willow Creek was the kind of place where neighbors knew each other's names and children played safely in tree-lined streets. St. Mary's Orphanage sat on the hill, overlooking the town like a guardian angel, home to children who had nowhere else to go. These weren't just statistics. They were kids with dreams, fears, and futures ahead of them. That morning started like any other. The yellow school van pulled up to St. Mary's at exactly 8:30 a.m. Teacher Margaret Ellis checked her clipboard twice, counting heads as excited children climbed aboard. 28 children, ages 7 to 16, chattering about seeing the ocean for the first time. Some had never left Willow Creek. The plan was simple: drive to Cannon Beach, spend the day building sandcastles and collecting shells, return by dinner. The van pulled away from St. Mary's at 9:15 a.m., winding through Oregon's coastal mountains toward the Pacific. By 7 p.m., when the van hadn't returned, Director Miriam Lang called the police. By midnight, search teams were combing every road between Willow Creek and the coast. By dawn, the FBI had joined the largest missing persons case in Oregon's history. But here's what haunted everyone. There was no wreckage, no signs of an accident, no evidence of foul play. It was as if 28 children and 2 adults had simply vanished into thin air. The van was found 3 days later, abandoned in a rest stop parking lot 200 miles away, wiped clean of fingerprints. The case consumed the media for months. Theories ranged from mass abduction to cult activity to supernatural explanations. But as weeks turned to months and months to years, the story faded from headlines. The file gathered dust. The families, what few relatives these orphan children had, were left with nothing but questions and heartbreak. Yet one woman never stopped searching. One woman carried their memory every single day for 33 years. And on this anniversary morning, she was about to discover something that everyone else had missed. Evelyn Harper woke to gray skies on October 15th, 2025, exactly 33 years since the disappearance. At 73 years old, she moved slowly through her morning routine, but her mind was sharp as ever, replaying memories that refused to fade. She stood before her bedroom mirror, staring at a faded photograph taped to the glass, 28 smiling faces looking back at her from 1992. "Where are you?" she whispered, the same question she asked every morning. Her fingers traced the edges of the photo, worn smooth from years of touching. Evelyn had volunteered at St. Mary's for 5 years before the tragedy. She wasn't just a helper, she was their storyteller, their bedtime guardian, the one who tied shoelaces and wiped tears. She remembered every name, every laugh, every small triumph. Tommy Rodriguez, age 7, who was terrified of thunderstorms until Evelyn taught him to count lightning. Sarah Chen, 9, who loved drawing pictures of families she'd never had. Marcus Williams, 14, who protected the younger kids like a fierce older brother. Jessica Parks, 11, who dreamed of becoming a teacher just like Miss Ellis. The memories were both blessing and curse. Evelyn had lost her own family young, her parents in a car accident when she was 25, her husband to cancer just 3 years later. St. Mary's children became her family, filling the hole in her heart with purpose and love. When they vanished, that hole became a chasm. Her phone buzzed. A text from Clara Benson, another former volunteer, "Thinking of you today. Come over if you need company. I made scones." Clara understood. She'd been there that terrible day, helping search when the van didn't return. Together, they'd kept the children's memory alive, visiting the memorial garden every year, writing letters to cold case detectives, never letting the world forget. Evelyn dressed carefully, pinning a small purple ribbon to her sweater, the color St. Mary's children wore on special occasions. She packed a thermos of Earl Grey tea and drove through Willow Creek's familiar streets, noting how much had changed: new shops, young families, life moving forward, while her heart remained frozen in 1992. But today felt different somehow. As Evelyn pulled into Clara's driveway, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to shift. After 33 years of searching, of hoping, of grieving, today would bring answers she never expected. She had no idea that in Clara's living room, among old photo albums and fading memories, lay a clue that would unravel everything they thought they knew about that terrible day. Clara's house smelled of fresh scones and lavender, a comforting refuge from the weight of the anniversary. At 68, Clara moved with the careful precision of someone who'd learned to manage both physical pain and emotional wounds. Her silver hair was pulled back neatly, and her eyes held the same determined sadness that marked all the survivors of St. Mary's tragedy. "I thought we might look at the photo albums today," Clara said as she poured tea into delicate china cups. "Face the pain instead of avoiding it." They settled into Clara's living room, surrounded by boxes of memories, photo albums, newspaper clippings, Christmas cards from children who would never grow up to send them. Clara opened the largest album, and suddenly the room filled with ghosts. There was the St. Mary's Christmas pageant from 1991, Tommy Rodriguez wearing angel wings too big for his small frame, Sarah Chin's gap-toothed smile as she played a shepherd, the Halloween party where Marcus Williams dressed as Superman, convinced he could actually fly. "Look at them," Evelyn whispered, "so full of life." They turned pages slowly, each image a small wound reopened. Then Clara stopped at a particular photo, one Evelyn had seen hundreds of times but never really studied. It showed a group of children standing beside the yellow van on a bright morning, excitement radiating from their faces. "This was taken the day they left," Clara said softly. But as Evelyn looked closer, something caught her attention. In the background, partially obscured by the van's shadow, stood a figure she hadn't noticed before, a woman in a dark coat, checking something on a clipboard. Evelyn's heart skipped. "Clara, look at this photo, really look at it." Clara leaned in, adjusting her glasses. "What am I looking for?" "There," Evelyn pointed to the shadowed figure. "Who is that?" Clara squinted, then gasped. "That looks like— no, it can't be." "It's Director Lang," Evelyn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But I thought only Miss Ellis and aide David Kumar went on the trip." They stared at the photograph in silence. Miriam Lang, the orphanage director, had always maintained she stayed behind that day to handle administrative duties. She'd been questioned extensively by police, her alibi checked and verified. She was supposedly in meetings all morning. "Maybe the photo was taken earlier," Clara suggested, but her voice lacked conviction. Evelyn shook her head. "Look at the children's clothes. Tommy's wearing that striped shirt he loved, his adventure shirt. He called it. He only wore it on special occasions. And Sarah has her field trip backpack." Clara pulled out a magnifying glass, studying the image more carefully. "There's something else," she said slowly. "Look at the van's license plate. You can just make out the numbers." Evelyn peered through the magnifying glass. The plate was partially visible, OLV4. She grabbed a folder from the coffee table, pulling out police reports she'd requested years ago through Freedom of Information Act requests. The missing van's plate was OLV 427. She read aloud, "This is definitely the morning they left." They sat back in their chairs, the implications washing over them. If Miriam Lang was present when the children boarded the van, why had she lied to police? Why had no one else noticed her in the photograph? "We need to be careful," Clara warned. "We've followed false leads before. Remember the supposed sighting in Portland that turned out to be nothing?" But Evelyn was already reaching for her coat. 33 years of questions were crystallizing into something that felt like hope, dangerous, fragile hope that terrified and thrilled her. "I'm going to ask her," Evelyn said firmly. "Evelyn, wait." "No more waiting, Clara. Those children deserve answers. If there's even a chance this means something." Clara sighed, recognizing the determined set of Evelyn's jaw. She'd seen it before, in the weeks and months after the disappearance when Evelyn had refused to give up searching. "Then I'm coming with you." but Evelyn was already walking toward the door, clutching the photograph like a lifeline. After 33 years of dead ends and broken promises, she finally had something concrete to pursue. She had no idea that this single photograph would unlock secrets that had been buried for over 3 decades. Miriam Lang lived in a modest ranch house on Elm Street, just 10 minutes from where St. Mary's Orphanage once stood. The building had been demolished years ago, replaced by a small park with a memorial bench that Evelyn visited every month. Evelyn sat in her car for several minutes, studying Lang's house. It looked ordinary: beige siding, small front garden, American flag hanging limply from a porch pole. Nothing about it suggested the woman inside might hold the key to 33 years of anguish. Rain began to spatter the windshield as Evelyn finally gathered her courage and walked to the front door. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she pressed the doorbell. The door opened to reveal Miriam Lang, now 81 years old, but still recognizable. Her once dark hair was completely silver, her face lined with age, but her eyes were the same pale blue Evelyn remembered. Lang's expression shifted from polite curiosity to shock. "Mrs. Harper," Lang's voice was thin, uncertain. "Hello, Miriam. I hope you don't mind me stopping by." Before Lang could respond, a younger woman appeared behind her, mid-40s, with dark hair and nervous eyes that darted between Evelyn and Lang. "I should go," the woman said quickly. "No, Rachel, stay," Lang said, but there was urgency in her voice. "Mrs. Harper was just. I wanted to ask you about something." Evelyn interrupted, pulling out the photograph. This picture was taken the morning the children left for their field trip. Lang's face went pale as she stared at the image. Her hands trembled slightly as she took it. "I don't understand what you're asking," Lang said, but her voice lacked conviction. "You're in the photograph, Miriam, standing by the van, but you told police you stayed at the orphanage all morning." The younger woman, Rachel, stepped closer, studying the photo over Lang's shoulder. Her intake of breath was audible. "This was taken at the orphanage," Lang said quickly, "before they left. I was just checking to make sure they had everything. But you told investigators you were in back-to-back meetings, starting at 8:30 that morning." Evelyn pressed gently. "The van left at 9:15. Lang's composure was cracking. She glanced nervously at Rachel, who had gone very still. There might have been a gap between meetings. I may have stepped outside briefly." "Miriam, the children's families have waited 33 years for answers. If there's anything at all, that you remember differently now." "There's nothing," Lang snapped, then caught herself. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Harper. This day is difficult for all of us. But I've told the police everything I know. Nothing has changed." But something had changed. Evelyn could see it in the way Lang's eyes wouldn't meet hers, in the protective stance Rachel had taken, in the tension crackling through the air. "Who is Rachel?" Evelyn asked quietly. "A friend," Lang said too quickly. "She helps me around the house." Rachel opened her mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. There was something familiar about her features, something that tugged at Evelyn's memory. "I should let you get back to your day," Evelyn said, accepting that she wouldn't get more information right now. But as she turned to leave, she caught Rachel's eye one more time. The young woman's expression was tortured, as if she was carrying an enormous weight. And in that moment, Evelyn was certain, absolutely certain, that Rachel knew something about the missing children. "If you ever want to talk," Evelyn said, handing Rachel a business card with her phone number, "about anything, I'm always available." Rachel took the card with shaking fingers, and Evelyn noticed a small scar on her wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve. The kind of scar a child might get from climbing trees or playing too roughly. The kind of scar Evelyn remembered seeing on several of the St. Mary's children. As Evelyn walked back to her car, rain beginning to fall harder, one question consumed her thoughts: who was Rachel, and why did she look so much like one of the missing children? Evelyn drove through downtown Willow Creek in a daze, her mind spinning with questions about Miriam Lang's strange behavior and the mysterious Rachel. She needed flowers for the memorial service, lilies, which had been Sarah Chen's favorite. But first she needed time to think. The florist's shop was warm and fragrant, filled with autumn blooms. Mrs. Peterson, who'd run the shop for 40 years, recognized Evelyn immediately. "The usual arrangement, dear," she asked gently. Everyone in town knew what October 15th meant for Evelyn, as Evelyn arranged white lilies in a simple bouquet. Her hands trembled slightly. The encounter with Lang had shaken her more than she'd expected. There was something wrong, something that went beyond a simple memory lapse about being present when the van departed. The bell above the shop door chimed, and Clara entered with her husband Tom, a retired police officer who'd worked the original case. "We got worried when you didn't come back," Clara said. "How did it go with Miriam?" Evelyn told them about Lang's nervousness, the contradictory story about the photograph, and most importantly, about Rachel. Tom frowned. "Rachel what? Did you get a last name?" Lang didn't give one, but Tom. There was something about her. She looked familiar and scared, like she was carrying a terrible secret. Tom had seen that look before in his 30 years of police work. "Did she seem like she wanted to tell you something?" "Yes, but Lang was watching her closely, and she had a scar on her wrist." Evelyn stopped mid-sentence, a memory surfacing. "Oh my God. What is it?" Clara asked. "Lena Voss, one of the missing children. She had a scar on her right wrist from falling out of a tree when she was 8. I was there when it happened. Drove her to the emergency room myself." The three of them stared at each other as the implications sank in. "You think Rachel might be," Tom began. "I think Rachel might be Lena Voss, age 33 years older," Evelyn whispered. Tom immediately reached for his phone. "I'm calling the current detective on the case." "Wait," Evelyn said. "What if I'm wrong? What if we traumatize an innocent woman based on wishful thinking?" But even as she said it, pieces were clicking into place. Rachel's age appeared right. Her physical features, while changed by time, bore a resemblance to the 11-year-old girl Evelyn remembered. The scar, the look of recognition when she saw the photograph. "There's only one way to find out," Clara said quietly. "We go to the memorial service as planned. If Rachel is really Lena, she might show up there too." Tom nodded grimly. "I'll call Detective Morrison and have her meet us at the cemetery, if there's any chance one of those kids is alive." As they drove toward Willow Creek Cemetery, Evelyn clutched the lily bouquet and tried to manage her racing heart. For 33 years, she'd prayed for this moment, any sign that one of her children had survived. But now that it might be real, the fear was almost overwhelming. What if Lena was alive but had chosen to stay hidden? What if there were reasons she couldn't come forward? What if the truth was more horrible than the mystery? The cemetery came into view, its weathered headstones standing like silent sentinels against the gray October sky. In the back corner sat 28 small memorial stones, not graves, since there were no bodies to bury, but markers for children who deserved to be remembered. And standing among those stones, holding her own flowers, was Rachel. Rachel stood motionless before the memorial stones, clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers. She hadn't noticed Evelyn's arrival, lost in what appeared to be a private conversation with the dead. Her lips moved silently, and tears streamed down her cheeks. Evelyn approached slowly, not wanting to startle her. Clara and Tom hung back, giving them space while keeping watch for Detective Morrison's arrival. "Rachel," Evelyn said softly. The younger woman turned, her face streaked with tears. Up close in the gray afternoon light, the resemblance was even stronger. The same dark eyes, the same stubborn chin, even the way she held her shoulders. Exactly like the 11-year-old girl who used to help Evelyn sort library books at St. Mary's. "I come here every year," Rachel said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been coming for 22 years, ever since you what?" Rachel's eyes darted around the cemetery, as if checking for watchers. "I shouldn't be talking to you," Miriam said. "Miriam said what?" Evelyn stepped closer, her heart pounding. "Rachel, if you know something about what happened to those children, please tell me. Their families have suffered for so long." "I can't," Rachel's voice broke. "You don't understand. If I tell the truth, people will get hurt, people who helped me." "Helped you what? Survive?" The word hung between them like a bridge neither dared to cross. But Rachel's silence was answer enough. Evelyn reached out slowly, gently taking Rachel's hand. "Show me your wrist." Rachel tried to pull away, but Evelyn held firm. With trembling fingers, she pushed back Rachel's sleeve, revealing a thin white scar running from her wrist toward her palm. You fell out of the oak tree behind the orphanage on May 15th, 1992. 8 stitches. You were so brave in the emergency room. Didn't cry once, but you were worried about missing story time. Rachel's face crumpled. You remember. I remember everything, Lena. Every story I read to you. Every scraped knee I bandaged. Every nightmare I chased away. I've carried you with me for 33 years. My name is Rachel now, she said, but the words lacked conviction. What happened to you? What happened to the others? Lena, Rachel, looked at the memorial stones. Her expression devastated. Some of them didn't make it. Tommy, Marcus, they died so young, so scared. Evelyn felt her knees give way. Clara rushed forward to catch her, but Evelyn waved her off, focusing entirely on the woman before her. How many, she whispered, how many survived? I don't know, we were separated right away. I only know about myself and maybe 3 others, but I'm not even sure they're still alive. Lena, you have to tell the police. The families deserve to know. No, the sharpness in her voice cut through the cemetery air. You don't understand what they'll do if they find out I talked. Miriam protected me all these years because she felt guilty. But there are others, dangerous people who are still out there. Detective Morrison's car pulled into the cemetery and Rachel, Lena, panicked. I have to go, please, Mrs. Harper. Please don't tell them, not yet. Give me time to figure out how to do this safely. But Evelyn grabbed her arm gently. Lena, honey, you've been carrying this alone for 22 years. Let us help you carry it now. For a moment, something flickered in Lena's eyes. The same trust she'd shown as a child when Evelyn promised to check for monsters under her bed. Detective Morrison approached, her footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. I'll tell them, Lena said suddenly. I'll tell them everything, but not here. Not like this. Meet me at the police station in 1 hour. I need to get something first, evidence that I've been hiding all these years. She pressed something into Evelyn's hand, a small, tarnished locket that Evelyn immediately recognized. Sarah Chen's necklace, Evelyn breathed. She gave it to me right before. Lena's voice broke. 1 hour. Mrs. Harper, and then I'll tell you everything. As Lena hurried away, Evelyn stared at the locket in her palm. After 33 years of questions, answers were finally within reach. But she couldn't shake the feeling that the truth would be more horrible than anything she'd imagined. The Willow Creek Police Department had never seen anything like it. Detective Morrison cleared the largest conference room, bringing in extra chairs as word spread that there might be a breakthrough in the orphanage case. Evelyn sat at the long table, turning Sarah's locket over and over in her hands, while Clara and Tom flanked her for support. When Lena arrived exactly 1 hour later, she carried a worn canvas bag and looked like she'd aged a decade in 60 minutes. Her face was pale but determined, the expression of someone who'd finally decided to stop running from the truth. Before I begin, she said, sitting across from Detective Morrison, I need you to understand that everything I'm about to tell you will put people in danger, people who saved my life. Detective Morrison activated a recording device. MS, I'm sorry, what name should I use? My name is Lena Marie Voss. I was 11 years old when I was taken from the van on October 15th, 1992. I was one of the missing children from St. Mary's orphanage, even though Evelyn had suspected it. Hearing the words spoken aloud sent shockwaves through the room. Where have you been for 33 years? Detective Morrison asked gently. Lena opened the canvas bag and pulled out a manila folder thick with documents, photographs, and newspaper clippings. First, I need to explain about Director Lang. She wasn't evil, she was desperate and terrified. The orphanage was failing financially. The state was threatening to close it down and scatter all of us to different facilities. Miriam couldn't bear the thought of breaking up the only family some of these kids had ever known. She pulled out a bank statement from 1992. She borrowed money from people she shouldn't have borrowed from, dangerous people who demanded immediate repayment. Evelyn's heart sank as the picture became clear. They offered her a way to pay them back. Lena nodded, tears starting again. 28 children, each worth thousands of dollars to the right buyers. Miriam convinced herself it would be temporary, that we'd be placed in good homes just unofficially. Human trafficking, Detective Morrison said grimly. The field trip was a setup. We never went to the beach. About 20 minutes into the drive, Miss Ellis pulled into a rest stop where 3 other vehicles were waiting. Miss Ellis and David, our aide, they tried to fight when they realized what was happening, but they were outnumbered. Lena's voice became mechanical, detached, as if she was reading someone else's story. They shot Miss Ellis first. David tried to shield us kids, told us to run, but there was nowhere to go. They shot him too, right in front of us. Tommy was screaming. Sarah was calling for you, Mrs. Harper. Evelyn made a sound like a wounded animal. Clara reached over and took her hand. We were split up immediately. 8 children in each vehicle, heading in different directions. I was in the group going south, toward California. Marcus Williams was with me, and little Sarah, and 5 others whose names I'll never forget. She pulled out a photograph, recent, showing a middle-aged man with kind eyes. This is Dr. Robert Chen, no relation to Sarah, but he was working at a clinic in Los Angeles where they brought us for medical examinations before the final sale. He recognized what was happening and helped 6 of us escape. How? Detective Morrison leaned forward. He sedated the guards, gave us civilian clothes, and put us in his car. But we had to split up. Staying together would have made us too easy to find. Dr. Chen took me to a safe house run by his wife. They'd been helping trafficking victims for years. Lena pulled out more documents, a fake birth certificate, school records, medical files. They gave me a new identity. Rachel Chen became their unofficial adopted daughter. I lived with them for 8 years, until I was old enough to make my own decisions. Why didn't you contact the police then? Tom asked. Because I was 19 years old and terrified. The people who killed Miss Ellis and David were still out there. Dr. Chen had received threats just for helping us. And Miriam Lang. She pulled out a letter written in shaky handwriting. Miriam found me when I turned 21. She'd been consumed by guilt, watching the news coverage, seeing how much pain our disappearance caused. She begged me to stay hidden, said if the truth came out, the people responsible would kill anyone connected to their operation, including me. So she's been supporting you all these years? Evelyn asked. Financially and emotionally. She felt responsible for destroying my childhood. In her mind, keeping me safe was the only way to make amends. Detective Morrison was taking rapid notes. Lena, I need names. The people who organized this. The buyers, anyone you can remember. Lena's face went white. Most of them are probably dead by now. This was 33 years ago. But some of the organizations they worked with. She pulled out newspaper clippings about various trafficking rings broken up over the years. Dr. Chen has been tracking them, trying to help other victims. What about the other children? Evelyn's voice was barely audible. Lena closed her eyes. Sarah Chen died 3 years after we escaped. Pneumonia, but really she died of a broken heart. She never got over seeing Miss Ellis shot. Marcus made it to 18, but he was placed with bad people. He overdosed in 1998, but I think it was suicide. The room fell silent, except for the sound of Evelyn's quiet weeping. I know this is devastating, Lena continued, but some of us survived. Jenny Morrison, she's married now, living in Seattle under a different name. She has children, a normal life. And there might be others from the different groups who were taken. She reached across the table and took Evelyn's hands. Mrs. Harper, you gave us love when we had nothing. You made us believe we were worth something. That love, it's what kept me alive when things were darkest. It's what gave me strength to survive and eventually build a life. Through her tears, Evelyn managed to speak. I failed you. I should have protected you. You did protect us, Lena said firmly. Every story you read, every scraped knee you kissed better, every time you told us we were special, that protection lived inside us. It's still living inside us. Detective Morrison cleared her throat. Lena, are you willing to make an official statement to help us reopen this case properly? Lena nodded. It's time. I'm tired of hiding. Those children, my friends, they deserve justice. And the families deserve to know what happened. The formal interview stretched into the evening, as Lena methodically recounted every detail she could remember. FBI agents specialized in cold case trafficking investigations joined them, and the small conference room buzzed with activity. "I need you to walk me through the organization that took you," Agent Sarah Kim said gently. "Start with the people who met your van." Lena took a shaky breath. There were 6 of them at the rest stop. 2 were local. I found out later they worked for a man named Vincent Torres, who controlled most of the illegal activity in this region. Torres is dead now, killed in a drug dispute in 1997. She pulled out more documents from her bag. But the operation was bigger than just local criminals. There was a woman named Helena Voss. She used my last name as part of her cover identities. She coordinated the buyers, arranged the transportation. Dr. Chen tracked her for years, but she disappeared in 2003. Agent Kim made notes. "What about the buyers? Did you meet any of them?" Lena's hands trembled. "The group I was with, we were taken to a warehouse in Los Angeles. There were maybe 15 or 20 adults there, looking at us like we were merchandise. They had catalogs with our photos, descriptions of our personalities." Evelyn felt sick. "How did Dr. Chen know to help you?" "He'd been documenting the operation for months, trying to gather evidence to give to the FBI. But these people had connections everywhere: police, social services, even some federal agents. He couldn't trust anyone official. That's why he acted alone." Agent Kim nodded. "Smart but dangerous. 6 of us escaped that night, but we had to split up immediately. Dr. Chen could only take me. The others went with different helpers in his network. I don't know what happened to all of them." Detective Morrison looked up from her notes. "Lena, you mentioned earlier that Miriam Lang felt guilty. Was she directly involved in the planning?" Lena's face crumpled. She knew it was going to happen. She even chose which children would go on the field trip. But she thought, she really believed, that we would just be placed in unofficial adoptions. Good families who wanted children, but couldn't go through legal channels. "She was naive," Tom said grimly. "She was desperate. When she realized what actually happened, when Miss Ellis and David were murdered, she tried to back out. But by then it was too late." Lena reached into her bag one more time and pulled out a tape recorder, old and well-worn. "I made Miriam tell me everything when I turned 21. I recorded it. She wanted to confess to the police then, but I begged her not to. I was terrified they'd find me." She pressed play and Miriam Lang's voice filled the room, younger than it was now, broken by sobs. "I never meant for children to die. They promised me the children would be safe, would find loving homes. When I heard about Margaret and David, when I realized what I'd really done, I wanted to die. I should have died instead of those innocent babies." The recording continued for nearly an hour, with Lang providing names, dates, locations, everything she knew about the trafficking operation. "She's been living with this guilt for 33 years, Agent Kim observed. "We all have," Lena said quietly. "But hiding from it didn't make it go away. It just made it fester." Detective Morrison gathered the documents and evidence Lena had provided. "This is enough to reopen the investigation officially. We'll need to coordinate with multiple agencies. Some of these leads cross state and international lines." "What about Miriam?" Evelyn asked. "She'll need to be arrested," Agent Kim said gently. "But given her cooperation and the circumstances, and considering how much time has passed, she'll likely receive a minimal sentence. The focus will be on finding any surviving children and tracking down the people who actually orchestrated the trafficking." 3 months later, the case that had haunted Willow Creek for over 3 decades finally began to reach resolution. The FBI task force had identified and arrested 12 people connected to the trafficking operation, including several who were still active in similar crimes. More importantly, they had located 4 additional survivors from the St. Mary's group. Evelyn sat in the front row of the courthouse as Miriam Lang, now 81 and frail, received her sentence: 3 years probation and community service working with trafficking prevention organizations. The judge acknowledged her cooperation and genuine remorse, noting that her information had led to the rescue of dozens of other victims over the years. Outside the courthouse, news crews waited, but Evelyn and Lena slipped out a side exit. They had said everything they needed to say in their victim impact statements. That evening, as autumn gave way to winter, they returned to Willow Creek Cemetery. The memorial garden had been expanded, with new stones added for Miss Ellis and David Kumar, whose remains had finally been located and properly buried. But there were also stones of hope, markers for the survivors who had been found, testifying that some stories of loss could become stories of redemption. Lena placed fresh flowers on Sarah Chen's memorial stone. "I kept my promise," she whispered. "I told Mrs. Harper about your necklace. I told everyone how brave you were." Evelyn stood beside her, no longer the desperate woman who had searched for ghosts, but someone who had helped bring the living home. "Jenny Morrison wants to meet you," Lena said. "She's been following the news coverage. She has a daughter now, named her Sarah." "I'd like that," Evelyn replied. "I'd like to meet all of you who survived." As they walked back toward the cemetery entrance, Lena stopped at the old oak tree that stood near the memorial garden, the same tree she had fallen from as a child, earning the scar that had helped identify her. "Mrs. Harper, there's something I need to tell you. Something I couldn't say during the investigation." Evelyn waited patiently. "When we were being held in that warehouse, when everything was dark and terrifying, I would remember the story you used to read to us. The one about the little girl who got lost in the forest, but found her way home by following the stars." Evelyn remembered. It had been one of their favorites during story time. "You taught us that even when we couldn't see the path, the light was still there, guiding us home. That story, that hope, it's what kept me alive when I wanted to give up." Tears ran down Evelyn's cheeks, but for the first time in 33 years, they were tears of joy mixed with the sorrow. "You did find your way home, sweetheart. You all found your way home, even the ones who couldn't make it back in body. They're still with us." Above them, the first stars of evening began to appear through the winter clouds. 28 children had left St. Mary's Orphanage on a bright October morning in 1992. Not all of them had survived the journey that followed, but their memory, their story, and the love that had sustained them would live on. And for the first time since that terrible day, Evelyn Harper could finally sleep peacefully, knowing that the children she had loved were no longer lost. The truth had been painful beyond imagining, but it had also been healing. In a small town that had been haunted by questions for 33 years, there were finally answers. And sometimes, even in the darkest stories, that is enough.